Welcome. I'm glad to be here. And you folks who are here nice and promptly can see I'm here with Heather Chauvin. This is going to be a really nice conversation. I think I'm really looking forward to this one. So all of you who are here and who are watching on the replay, you know that we're here to discuss energetic time management. So that's managing your energy and not your time. I think this is just an absolutely critical conversation to have. So thank you for being here to do that, Heather. For those of you who don't know, just very briefly, Heather Chauvin is a TEDx speaker. She's the author of Dying to Be a Good Mother and host of a highly loved podcast called Emotionally Uncomfortable. So Heather's here today with us in Networking Nutritionists to discuss how to feel alive and energized and free when the world has different expectations of whom you need to be, and to learn how to reconnect with the parts of you that want more so you can give more. And that includes how to focus your time and energy into high revenue generating and joy producing activities so that you can do less and make more. And before I turn it over and let Heather do a bit of an introduction for herself as well, I want to apologize in advance for both of us. It sounds like we're both just a little bit under the weather today, but really looking forward to this conversation. So for any little frogs in the throat, I'm sorry in advance.
Yes, it's fascinating how the body works. This thing is not going away. So I'm like, okay, I'll take that as a sign that I need to talk less, but also, it really forces you to slow down. And I think that's a really good into the whole managing your energy, not your time. So I'm happy to dive right in a little bit about my story, how I got here. And I love teaching people this skill as well, because I think, especially for women in business, women trying to make an impact, it's so easy to give, but more what I would call emotionally uncomfortable, not hard to learn how to receive. So yes, where would you like me to dive in?
I would love if you would tell us a little bit about yourself. You have such an interesting story, and everyone might not be familiar with you. So if you do want to start there and just tell us a little about yourself and your story.
Awesome. Yeah. So my background is actually in social work, and I fell in love with social work. I fell in love with mental health and mindfulness, but more from actually the child's perspective. I have three boys. They're 18, 13, and 10. And when I became a mother, I was a young single mother. And when I became a mom, I already felt like I was failing because I was doing things backwards. And as my son started to grow, here I am reading all the books, doing all the things, air quotes, right. And I was like, I'm missing something. Something is not working. I'm going to, the healthcare providers, I'm going to therapy, I'm doing all the things, and I'm getting feedback of well, this is life. It is what it is. But it was that deeper voice, and I'm sure all of you can understand this, that deeper voice of there's something more. There has to be another way to do this. And so I started thinking outside of the box and kind of taking more of a holistic perspective on one, seeing and understanding my son's behavior. And that really started with emotional intelligence. And so I'm like, what's his anxiety telling me? What's his fear and telling me, or his anger? He's projecting it. How can I do this more in a loving, compassionate way rather than the traditional model, which is usually what we're all trying to get out of or unlearn or heal. But I didn't understand that my son was actually teaching me where I needed to grow. And so he was projecting a lot of fear or a lot of things onto me that if he didn't know how to manage his anger, of course, I didn't know how to manage mine. So I didn't feel confident or in control of that. So eventually I decided to leave my job as a social worker because I wanted to make a bigger impact in the world, not understanding that when you go from employee mindset to business owner mindset, that is a huge identity shift, and you actually need to become a different person. So when I'm working with women now, it's either from this personal perspective of wanting to feel alive and energized at home or in their business as well. And I'm going to show a little model of how I do that. But just to fast forward a little bit, as I'm investing and learning these skills and teaching my son how to manage his big emotions and his behaviors, of course, I'm learning to do those things as well. I start teaching this to other people and my business is growing. And 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. And part of that was I was very good at investing in other people, but not investing in myself. And investing in myself was, I'm talking time and energy. There's a huge, I mean, time, energy, and money are like the three pillars that I talk about when it comes to attracting profit or, those investment buckets. But I think a lot of times it's so much easier for us to invest in other people, to invest in our clients or invest in our family. And my health crisis really came from, I think, an unlearning of like, I knew I needed help, but health felt so overwhelming to me because it wasn't my background. And I was reading about it, I was learning about it, but it was just a bucket that I kept putting off. And I also was incredibly disconnected from my body. So when my body was giving me signs and symptoms, I thought that my identity was like, this is parenting, this is motherhood, like this is normal. So I kind of just took it as what it was until my body was like, I've had enough of you. I'm done. So fast forward, I started taking what I was learning in, the parenting, child development, and then my health crisis. And that's how my book came about, which was Dying to Be a Good Mother, which was not that I was physically dying. Like, yes, my physical body was, but it was also, like my mental body, my spiritual body, my financial body, like all of these parts of me were dying, and I was abandoning myself to be good for other people. And I see so many women in the helping professions that are just give of their time, their energy, their resources, and this like not enoughness wound that really comes out that does not serve anybody. So that's where I'm at. Now it's all about attracting more into your life. How do you want to feel, and learning to reverse engineer that? And so that's where it comes to managing energy, not time. And that's where we're at
So
today.
yeah, maybe let's jump into that then. So what is this idea of energy time management, or energy management? How do you teach that? How do you conceptualize that for people?
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed, I had 9 years under my belt of personal development. And I realized that I was reading these books, I had the mentors, I had all the things, but I was still in that box checky mode of like, okay, I got to get this done. I got to do this. I got to send that email. And although I was meditating, I was doing the things, there was some things that I wasn't looking at. And so I tell people all the time, like, you have to look at your fear, you have to look at your resistance. And so from a practical perspective on how do we actually manage the energy? Well, first, I'm going to tell a story to kind of give an example of this. And one, I don't want anyone to have a health crisis to get to this point, but this was it for me. So I remember I was at home in between treatments, and I was it was in the middle of the night, because that's when we all have our panic attacks, is in the middle of the night. And my body was in the state of fight or flight, right? So I'm telling myself mentally, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I was very, very scared. And because I was in like a health crisis. So I go into the bathroom and I'm like in fetal position, and I'm telling myself this story of like, my brain is fixated on the fear. It's like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And I get myself present enough mentally, because I have these tools, I have this strategy, and I'm like, okay, but you're not dead yet. Like, be present in this moment. Are you alive right now? Yes, you are alive right now. Okay, great. How do you want to feel? And that's like a huge thing that I teach people, is how do you actually want to feel in your life, in your business, when you're opening your bank account, when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to your children, when you're like, how do you want to feel in your mind, in your body, in your soul? So I'm like, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I don't want to feel dead. I want to feel alive. I want to feel alive. I want to feel alive. Great. Then I'm like, what do I need to feel alive? How do I want to feel? So I move my brain from kind of like the survival state, right? Because it goes back to the comfort zone, to how do I want to feel? And as I'm over here and how do I want to feel, I then realize that I didn't know how to feel alive. And so number one, when we're managing our energy, not our time, and I talk about this all the time. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you like a step by step. So there's like an actual strategy that I teach, and there's a workbook and audios that you can listen to again and again. But step one is you have to get clear on how you want to feel. And when I knew that I actually didn't know how to feel alive because I didn't have evidence in my life of feeling that way because I was just busy. And, if I went back to my childhood, like I just had no idea, right? People are like, I want to feel free. I want to feel calm. I want to feel present. I want to feel abundant. And I'm like, but do you actually know what that feels like? Have you experienced that actual energy in your life? And the second thing I want to say is that we're not actually going after the tangible thing. It's always a feeling. So a huge impact in my life, and this is what all the personal development books talk about, or manifesting or anything like that. It's a feeling that we're after. Danielle Laporte's book, Desire Map, came out around that time when I was, in my health crisis. And I was all for it, but there was a part of me that didn't really understand what she was saying because it felt so out there. Like, just do your vision board and then close your eyes and like cross your fingers and meditate. And I didn't understand that I needed to take action. But when I took action, I didn't feel the feeling, right? Because like my cup, if I have a cup here and I'm like, I have a little bit of water with electrolytes in it, but like if my cup was full of guilt and shame and fear, and I'm trying to do the good things to pour it into my cup, into my life, like I'm taking these actions that are supposed to feel good, allow me to feel alive, I had to get rid of what was in it first. So when I was doing the things that I thought would make me feel better, I didn't feel better right away because I actually had to feel what I was avoiding, which was guilt and shame and fear. And so many people actually avoid feeling, which is why my podcast is called Emotionally Uncomfortable. So part of this managing your energy and not your time is getting clear on what you want. And there's a journal prompt. So write this down. There's a journal prompt that I teach called Wouldn't It Be Nice If? Wouldn't it be nice if? And the reason why I'm asking you to do Wouldn't It Be Nice If is because it's not like, what do you want? Right? It's like, just wouldn't it be nice if? And you're just like, oh, I could go for a walk. I could feel better. I could, I didn't worry about money. Someone could bring me a glass of water. I could have a bath tonight. Like it's just loose, right? And then you look at your list and you ask yourself, like, what are the feeling words that I'm after? Like, what are the feelings in here? And you're going to get results like alive, energized, free, abundant, joyful. And you have to somehow convince yourself to understand that it's not the goal you're after, right? Like more clients, more money, more. There's a feeling. And if you've ever achieved a goal and you get there, you're like, okay, when I do this, then I'll feel. People say this all the time. When my kids are older, then my guilt will go away. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still waiting for that to happen. Like I'm still waiting to be like, oh yeah, when they're 18, then your job is done. It's like, why are we telling these cultural stories? I actually think my job is like picking up a little bit because, they're going from teen to adulthood. And so it's these lies we tell ourselves that it's the actual thing that when we get that physical thing, the bigger house, the whatever. So then I got clear on the feeling, energetic time management, managing the energy, not the time. Okay. So let's use money as an example because anyone in business or anyone who has to actively put themselves out there to attract more money, this is very counterintuitive. So if I want to feel abundant and energized around my money, then I need to feel that more every day. And it has nothing to do with money. So if I ask myself, how am I going to feel abundant? It might actually feel abundant for me to like wake up naturally instead of having a rush. It might feel abundant for me to like buy those pair of shoes that feel a little too extra for me, but really maybe they're above what I would normally invest, but it's like an extra $100, right? It's not a lot, but like, you're going to feel so good wearing that. It just being mindful of like, what are these specific things that I need to do to feel a certain way? Some of them are physical. Some of them are emotional and like you can't see them. And so some of them are emotionally uncomfortable to get to the actual feeling. So instead of having this checkbox to-do list of like, I got to do this today, I got to do this today, I got to do this today, what you're actually doing is acquiring a few things that are going on your calendar first that allow you to feel a certain way. And you start to shift your mindset of like, am I doing this in alignment with how I want to feel versus checking boxes and kind of disconnecting yourself from the actual energy and feeling?
So why is it that you think it's important for women or healers, you said those in the helping professions, to focus more on energy than time? How do you see that benefiting them in their everyday life?
Okay, so this is where I would love to share my diagram. Let me see if I'm going to pull it up. I find the number one mindset that I had to learn and acquire was that I need to become the type of person that I most desire to see in the world. I need to practice. I know I'm not sharing yet. I need to practice what I preach, right? So this really started as parenting for me. It was like, instead of trying to control my child's behavior, I needed to become the role model. Like when you read all of these leadership books, when you read anything, at the end of the day, it's going to be practice what you preach, right? Become the type of person that you want to attract. And where I'm at now there's a few different ways that I just like to tell stories and examples. So as a potential client to a lot of healers, nutritionists, integrative medicine, like whatever you want to call it, like I was that person who was seeking out these people. I actually wasn't looking for the letters after somebody's name, like at all. I was looking for somebody who could hold me. I was looking for someone who could challenge me. I was looking for someone that I could connect with. I was looking for somebody that I could resonate with. And I remember one of my first healers functional medicine practitioners, they had this like belief that I was going to heal. Right? So when I was walking into my doctor's office, there was a little bit of like dread and scarcity and fear-based mindset around it, and very stats focused and science. And I'm the type of person because I think the personal development work I did ahead of time, I understood the power of belief, but I didn't want to surround myself with those people. So I wouldn't actually hire those types of people. So when you're a healer and you're telling people to live an abundant life, a healer, nutritionist, whatever, and you're telling people to live an abundant life, and you can't sleep at night because you are in like poverty, like debt, you're not energetically aligned, and you're going to start attracting that. So what I had to do was, this is just a framework that I teach because a lot of people who come to me are in time debt, like they feel like they don't have enough time, or they're in energy debt and they're kind of like, oh, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling alive. Or they're in this never enough money mindset, like this scarcity mindset or whatever you want to call it. The opposite of that is this time freedom. Like you're like, I have the freedom and flexibility. And sometimes it's, yes, I still work, right? Like I work, but I feel like I have the freedom to take that spontaneous, vacation if I want to. And financial freedom is the same thing. Like I'm looking at my money on a weekly basis. I'm opening the bank accounts. I have a strategy. I'm not restrictive with my money, but I'm not avoidant either. And energy is the same thing. It's like, how do I want to feel? And then making those things a priority. And nothing is perfect, right? Like, we got this little cold or whatever the heck is going on. But when life gives you contrast, my brain goes to, what do I need to do in order to get back in alignment with how I want to feel? And if I'm not like putting those things on the calendar or making space for it. Like, I believe in contrast. I love it where it's like, not this, not this, not this, right? So when I don't feel like I have enough time, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do about this, right? How can I change this? And it might take a week or a month, but I'm focused on this. How do I want to feel versus like, this sucks and this is just what it is. So it's really about learning how to manage the energy, getting into that mindset of how do I want to feel, and also practicing what you preach, really looking at our money stories, really looking at what are the stories that we're telling ourselves? Where are we not valuing ourselves? And when we start doing that, that is where this like abundance grows and we start to feel more alive, more energized. But in order to do that, we have to, I say, it's like double Dutch, right? Like you're standing there and like you have these ropes going. You're like, oh my gosh, am I going to get hit? Am I going to get hit? And that's where like, and then you're on the inside, you're like, yes, I did it. I did it. But the only way out is through is we have to feel our fear. We have to sit with our shame. We have to sit with our guilt. But it's really about owning how you want to feel. And this is everything that I'm talking about kind of on the outside of this circle as well.
While you have that up, can I ask a specific question? Because
Yeah.
I often hear from our group members that they're just overwhelmed with, all the things. Kids have activities and they're trying to cook well for their family and do the housework and have time for self-care and be an entrepreneur, just all the list of things that people put on their plate. How would you recommend that someone prioritize their time when they do have a lot of things to juggle? How do you navigate that time freedom piece of this pie you have up there?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of my favorite, and I definitely get into this in that resource that I'm going to give you. So I'll tell you the line by line of how to do that. But my number one go-to is brain dumping. I think we have to remember that we've been conditioned, especially as women, to be a certain way in a gender role, right? Like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. We have all these house things. And when I look back in time, when you are like in a season of your life where it's like the chicken or the egg, right? You're like, okay, well, if I'm going to outsource some of this, it might even just be laundry or someone's coming in and cleaning a little bit, but you're like, I don't have the finances to do that. But really, you have to like train your brain to be like, is this 911? Like, what are revenue generating activities? If you're truly identify as a business owner, I think sometimes it's the identity piece as well. Like, we're showing up and considering it a side hobby. Like, it's a passion project. It's not like, oh, wow, I'm the breadwinner, I'm the sole income earner. Like, if I don't make money, my children are not going to get fed. Like, that is a high priority, because I truly believe that if you have an out, you're going to give yourself an out. And so when I first started, excuse me, I would go upstairs and I'm like, oh my gosh, my sink is full of dishes. But what was more of a priority to me? Which one did I need to do first? Did I need to do the dishes and make sure my house was spotless first before I could take action on my business? When I did that, I realized I was actually doing that to self-sabotage. So you have to play with this mentally. But I will tell you, from a strategy perspective, the number one thing I do is I brain dump. So when I'm overwhelmed, I take that as a symptom. That's a sign. It is not my identity. It's not my way of being. That overwhelm can actually be a form of resistance, self-sabotage, to your brain saying, oh, okay, she's going into uncharted territory, so let's keep her safe. Because typically what happens is we get overwhelmed and then we just stop and avoid, right? Or like, oh, I can't take that action. So what I do is I stop, get pen and paper, and I dump out all my to-dos and I put them in little buckets like, I'll just put, little chart. And then I look and I'm like, what is the next step that I need to take? Like, what is 911? What needs to get done? It might be sending that invoice. It might be writing an email. And then I will look at the other things that are more comfort zone based of like, okay, let's, now I'm like vacuuming and doing all the things. But you have to really challenge yourself to be like, overwhelm is a symptom. It's not an identity. And then another thing that I notice a lot of people do is a lot of our actions, especially the way that the female brain in particularly is wired, it's not like the male versus female and gender roles. It's not what I'm talking about. It's the female brain, like it is such a powerhouse and we can multitask. But I would say that probably 80% of what my clients are doing is actually busy work. And the busy work is not getting results. And the reason why it's not getting results is because it's actually not, they're keeping themselves busy to avoid doing the work that's actually going to get them results. So the number one thing I teach people is like, where do you need to focus your energy and attention to get the ROI that you're looking for? And then most of the time when we're doing that, I'm like, you're going to focus here for 10 minutes a day. That's it. Just 10 minutes a day. And most of the time, well, within 30 days, they're like, okay, now my problem is I have too much time. And that scares me. And I'm like, well, that's a good problem to have because that white space is emotionally uncomfortable for a lot of us that have been taught to do.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it is that women in particular, and especially those in the helping professions, seem to have that trouble with putting themselves first? Do you think it is just those sort of cultural scripts that you alluded to, or do you think there's other reasons as well?
There we go. I was going to say my screen is frozen. I can stop this if you want me to. Can you ask that question again? It was like my screen was frozen. I'm like, oh,
no problem. Just why it is that you think that women and healers of any kind have this difficulty with putting themselves first, if you think it is mostly to do with those cultural scripts that you mentioned, or if there's other factors that play into that as well.
I want to use the word imposter syndrome, but I don't actually believe in imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a label. And people will say, oh, I have imposter syndrome, or I identify with that. I don't identify with the term imposter syndrome, but at the end of the day, I think it's worthiness. We don't think I think we all have worthiness wounds. And that is why we want to give and be and help other people to get that sense of purpose and impact. I know I've done a lot of inner work. I call myself a recovering rescuer because, oh boy, I was the responsible one, right? I still am, but I have boundaries with it now where I can be like, hey, you want this? I'll teach you, but I can't do it for you. One sec.
Sure.
Oh, here it goes.
It's okay. No, I definitely relate with a lot of the things that you've said so far around boundaries and stuff as well. I'll sort of fill in a moment while she goes and has her coughing fit that we thought might happen. Heather was talking about needing to have those boundaries and protecting your energy, and how she learned that during this health crisis. And I think for a lot of us, that is the case, that we've come to some sort of a crisis before we have this awakening and are able to move forward. But resources like this that she's put together can help us avoid that rock bottom, I think. I know I've talked a little bit with many of you how a brain injury that I suffered about 8 years ago now was just such an awakening for me. Because I couldn't just do all the things like Heather's talking about. I had to pick and choose and really prioritize. So I had to be really clear on where my values were and where I was going to spend that time and energy. So I think things like this can just help us come to those realizations without needing a brain injury or a cancer diagnosis or something like that. So,
oh boy.
Oh, I know. I was doing the same thing before we got on the call.
I'm like, it just comes.
Yep, all of a sudden. So I was just sort of filling a moment and sharing that I definitely resonate with what you've said so far. And I know a lot of your learning came from this cancer diagnosis. For me, learning a lot of these strategies, not that I would maybe be able to articulate them the same way that you have here, which is amazing. But I had a brain injury about 8 years ago. And so I went from being that person who just like white knuckled life and just did all the things no matter what, to not being able to physically or mentally be able to do all of the things that I thought I should be doing and having to make those decisions. So I think being able to learn about that without a crisis is really valuable. So we don't all have to have those
as I cough up a lung.
Yeah, so we don't all have to have those terrible experiences to get that personal growth.
Yeah. And this is a perfect example of like your body needs to come first. 1 second.
Sure.
Your body, your mind, your soul need to come first. And like my voice is the challenge right now. Everything else feels good. So it's like, sure, energetically, there could be some stuff coming up and out, but also just, it's interesting because like the last month, I got like whatever this was and it just rocked my world. But it gave me an opportunity for my body to say, hey, what else is not working? What else do we need to let go of? What else do we need to declutter? And also living a lifestyle where when something happens like this, like I didn't stress out about money. I didn't stress out about time. And my energy was lower because my body was recovering from something, but I got to create that flexibility of rescheduling things or taking more rest or having the financial freedom to reinvest in myself. And I know that like part of the human experience is our bodies need to recalibrate. Our bodies are going to go through a lot. There's times of, rest and digest, and it's not going to be perfect all the time, but we still have this mindset of like that life doesn't happen to us. And we're like, oh, I'm a robot and I'm just going to do. And it's like, what if the wind changes direction? Like, what if that thing happens? Like, you have to be ready for life to happen to you. So this whole concept of managing your energy, not your time. It's yes, physical energy. Like what's your body craving? My body is definitely craving to slow down right now, but I'm going to, there's other appointments I'm going to be making to be like, what's going on here? Like, and I have done those things, but then there's my mind of like, what's my mind craving? What's my soul craving? And also like my bank account. And then you just keep looking at it and everything is energy. You're managing it, right? It's the same with, if you're avoidant, like towards your body and you're just like, go, go, go. And then you burn out. If you're avoidant towards your mind, if you're avoidant towards your soul, like I believe in my story, my soul was like, you know what? You keep neglecting me. So I'm just going to leave the body now. Like if you don't want to honor this, if you don't want to respect me, I'm just going to physically leave your body. And the same with money. Like if you don't respect your money, it's just going to leave your bank account. And you're not, you're swiping the credit card. You're not consciously paying attention to it. And you have to learn to respect your energy. You have to learn to respect your body. You have to learn to respect your time. And it's the same as like, we're talking to people and, last week someone got on my calendar and then they were a no-show. I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. If you want to get on my calendar, there's a deposit you have to pay if you want to work with me, or there's like, I'm going to follow up with you. And if I don't get a confirmation that you're coming, like, or you don't even say, hey, sorry, something came up, like respect my time. I respect your time. So it's raising your standards for your energy. And I also notice this in relationships. So I talk a lot about how do you want to feel, right? In your relationships. And people will say, my kids walk all over me. And I'm like, because you let them. Like, you've allowed them to do that, or they don't respect my time. They don't respect my energy. They just take. And I'm like, yeah, but you happily let them take. So
Mhm.
when you teach people how to treat you, that's how they treat you. And it's the same with my clients. Like, I allow them we use an app where they can send me messages. They know when I will respond. I'm like, I have really good boundaries. You could send me a message at midnight. I'm not responding to you. I'm not responding on the weekends. They know that. So there's no conflict.
We had a question sort of in that same vein that was sent in advance. And it said, how can I be true to myself when others in my family don't see eye to eye with me? How can I stand up for myself and my beliefs and still make sure that I have peace within my family?
I think it's self-acceptance. Um, I have noticed this. People ask this all the time, but I think the part of, I mean, you can call it any type of journey, but like the awakening journey. I see a lot of my clients when they start on this personal development journey, the first thing that goes is their family. They're like, oh, wow, it's kicking up stuff for other people. You're triggering other people's emotional stuff because you have to remember you've created this ecosystem. And all of a sudden, you are changing. And so this is proof that when you manage your energy and you're more aligned, the ecosystem is changing. We're all interconnected. And so I am now, I mean, I've been on this journey for almost 20 years of personal development. I now like accept myself. My family's like, oh, that's Heather. That's a Heather thing to do, because I'm like, this is who I am. I have confidence in that. So when I first started, I was not confident. I was shaky, and I'm like, oh God, this is gonna be so uncomfortable. So now when people are projecting their thoughts and feelings onto me, because I have a lot more self-acceptance, I'm like, that's you. I'm not gonna judge you. You may have complete opposite health values than me. Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm right in my beliefs and you're right in your beliefs. That's okay. I don't need to get in a debate with you. I'm not here to convert anyone. So it's really about seeing and accepting everyone else, but we also have to feel the feelings that it's bringing up for us.
Do you have any tips on how individuals would identify what is really relevant to be spending their time and their energy on?
I think you have to look at what your goal is. So, and what season of life you're in. What do you want? What are you after? So, kind of going back to that, wouldn't it be nice if, and I'm going to use one example. Wouldn't it be nice if I was out of credit card debt? Wouldn't it be nice if I had an emergency fund of $50,000? Whatever. That's your goal. How do you think that's going to make you feel? Free. Okay, cool. You have to start infusing that feeling into your everyday life. What action do you need to take to feel that way? Like, from a strategy perspective, what action do you need to take? And then from an emotional perspective and an energy perspective, what action do you need to take to get to that goal? So that's where you need to focus your energy and attention. The other layer that I will add to this, from doing this for like long time, perfection has no place here. So perfection is a coping strategy. It does not exist if you think about it. So a lot of when you start doing this work, your blocks will come up very quickly. Perfection being one of them, of like, I don't know how. Well, what's the right way to do this? You have to realize that is your body trying to keep you safe. I talk a lot about the messy middle. Hence, like, me coughing up a lung on this interview, like old me, like beginner me, I would be like, oh my God, I'm mortified. That was awful. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is life. It's the messy middle. I mean, we work well together, Veronica. We flow together. I'm like, I'm coughing up a lung. You're like, I got you. I'll just tell another story. Like, this is how we co-create, right? But the messy middle is just like taking the action and seeing what energy comes back to you. So if you're like, I don't know where to focus, I'm so overwhelmed, do your brain dump. take some action that you think you should be taking, and then see, is that getting you closer to your result or not? And keep at it. But when I look back on my journey and I think, holy crap, I have become a completely different person. And I've built a lot of resilience because I made a commitment to myself that I wouldn't give up. It's not for the faint of heart, entrepreneurship and business ownership. I say it's personal development on steroids, just like parenting and relationships.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. It's not for everybody, and that's okay too.
Mhm.
Because entrepreneurship is something something very different. I have a couple
Can I
more.
add quickly to
Yeah, of
that?
course.
Because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's the visionary type that is very like your personality, human design, Enneagram, like any personality test you want to take or any type of, labels who you are. Not everybody should be the face of a brand. And I've seen a lot of people in my world that are like, I want to be a business owner, but I don't want people to see me. Business owners who are the front people, like the brand face, we need so much support and help that, like, if you can have a business or entrepreneurial mindset, but you're like, I don't want to be out there. Like, I don't want to push. I don't want to do that. Great. Be my partner, be my, be behind me, like right next to me. Let's build this together, but I'll put my face out there. So it's really getting comfortable into like where you want to be, but you don't need to be, the Oprahs. You don't need to like hustle and push to do that. I'm constantly asking myself, like, what feels good and what doesn't feel good? Is this resistance or is this reality? And I don't want to be launching. Like, I've built a very, very successful business. And on the outside, people would be like, wouldn't perceive it to be that. But this is also where you see oh, this person has 1 million followers, but they're not making any money. It's the other person who's like really focused on revenue generating activities. So behind the scenes, I'm making way more than people probably perceive on the outside.
Mhm. Got a couple more questions, and then I think you had one more thing you wanted to share, so I'll let you share that too. But another question that was sent in was, what are 3 things that every person should focus on to not drown in their schedule?
Their energy, meaning what is your soul craving? And putting those things on the calendar first. Creating lots of space, right? It's always going to take way longer than you think it's going to take. And creating space when you think you don't have time for space. So what I mean by that is like taking the weekends off or the nights off and blocking that off your calendar. Having boundaries with people and yourself, and paying attention to your emotional triggers. If someone's saying something to you and they're triggering something and you're like, ooh, that made me angry, pay attention to that. Don't avoid it. Don't shove it away.
I love all of those. That is fabulous advice. So I guess as a final takeaway, are there any little baby steps for people who are maybe feeling intimidated with implementing this in their life? Just like a little tidbit that they can get started with?
I would say do the brain dump first, and then the journal prompt of wouldn't it be nice if, and start that out. The resource that I'm going to give you is will help you with that, because I also understand this is like a big concept and new learning for a lot of people. I've broken it down to 5 10-minute audios. You can listen to it again and again, go for a walk. There's a workbook. And then at the end, it's something that I call the 10-minute habit. So it actually breaks these things down for you. And my goal is like, when you feel like you have no time, if you can commit to one action for 10 minutes a day consistently, you're going to slowly watch the energy change and evolve. So that's the intention of the resource I'm going to give you, because I do understand you're like, well, I want to change all areas of my life. And I tell people, this all or nothing mentality is not going to get you the results. We have to slow and steady wins the race. And it's also the same concept as to like, the advice you would give a client, right? If they're like, you're just like, okay, start drinking water and going for a daily walk. Like, you don't need to take thousands and thousands of dollars worth of supplements every day if you've never drank a glass of water. Like, let's just start small and do a little bit of compounding habits.
Yeah, that's good advice. Did you want to show anything on screen about that resource, or just pop it in the chat? How do you prefer to share that?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat, and it's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/ETM. This may not be a clickable link. And then it's usually $47, but if you use the promo code NN for networking nutritionists free, like NN free, it'll just give it to you for free. So you can go to,
Amazing.
let me see if I can make this clickable. Heather, let's put www. It may pop up as a different one, but anyways, it's heatherchauvin.com/ETM, and then NN free will make it a free thing for you. And it will be line by line, try to make it as easy as possible for you. Yeah, I personally feel like the more, I mean, I got a full plate, I have a full life, and I have a lot of space. I can make my life more spacious if I want it. I can make myself more busy if I want. But the feeling I'm after is abundance and impact and alive. And I truly believe the more alive you become, the more you become. That's exactly what the world needs. That's exactly what everyone needs from you. And you can have those deeply intimate, connected relationships and feel amazing.
I agree. And we'll make sure that we have that link with the replay as well. That's such a valuable offer, to give that free code so folks can download that and try that with them without the cost associated. So no excuse to not dig in and at least do some of those exercises. So thank you, Heather, for being here, for fighting through our collective frog in the throats, and sharing all of this with us anyways. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Veronica. Thanks, ladies.
All right, you take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.